So now I'm faced with a dilemma. You know, on the channel I've been kind of focusing on selling quite a lot of gear that I'm not using at the moment, and today I had a bit of time to spend with the HX effects, a bit more than I've spent with it in quite a while, and I was just running that Eric Johnson preset that you saw me create, I think for that video that I might have uploaded already, or maybe it's going up soon, but I'm just using it into my Mesa Boogie Lone Star. And then I thought, I'll try this into the Cali Tweed, because the Cali Tweed is obviously quite a differently voiced amp to the Mesa Lone Star. And what I ended up doing was, I liked it on the Mesa Lone Star. It's quite a dark sounding amp, the Lone Star, of course, or it can be anyway. Quite a full, thick, clean tone. The Cali Tweed, by comparison, is a little bit more scooped in the mids. And so what I ended up doing was, I've got this EQ after the Chandler tube driver, or the Butler tube driver, and what I did was just took the high shelf down a bit lower towards 1K for the Cali Tweed, because it seemed to be a little bit more sizzly and fizzy in front of the Cali Tweed, and you know that I like kind of dark lead tones, and basically then I was really enjoying that tone. So this is a thing that I definitely could not do with traditional kind of pedal setup unless you had an EQ on that board, which of course would be a totally reasonable thing to have on any pedal board, but I don't have one at the moment. And then the other thing that's really cool is the kind of thing that you can do with a MIDI switcher, or the kind of thing you can do with a pedal switcher, like I think, what is it, the Carl Martin Octa switch, for example. You can kind of switch between different patches which have different things on, so you can have a delay and a chorus on one, like my clean tone, delay, chorus, reverb, and all that stuff. And then for your lead tone, you could maybe turn off that chorus, and you could turn on a couple of gain stages. Now that's all way easier in the HX effects than any other kind of setup that I've ever played before. And I used to do this kind of 4-cable method thing with a Mesa Boogie Nomad and a Pod XD Live, and then a Pod HD 500. So I'm quite used to this kind of thinking. And it's got me now thinking, you know, the HX effects can do way more than any of my traditional pedals can do, and it's more flexible as well, because I can just tweak that EQ for my drive stages for each kind of amp that I might be playing it through. So if I think, oh, that's a bit sizzly and a bit fizzy through this particular amp, I can just go to that EQ block and I can dial back some of that with the high shelf, which is effectively, you know, which is then effectively taking things towards the kind of tone that I'm after. Or if it's a darker voiced amp like the Lone Star, I could potentially take that in the other direction. And it's all super easy for me to do. Yeah, it's just making me question the use of my real drive pedals and all that stuff. When I don't necessarily gig with a real pedal board much anyway, I prefer the convenience of having, you know, lots of different abilities to change presets on the fly with just one switch. So things like delay trails and things like reverb trails, things like being able to kick on multiple effects at once is really important to me on a function gig, so I can just concentrate on what I'm playing rather than the tap dancing stuff. So this has got me thinking perhaps I don't really even need even more of the pedals that I wasn't necessarily thinking of selling, because if I can get pretty much any tone that I want out of the HX effects, and I can tweak things very easily with a low high shelf EQ to suit each amp that I've got that I like to put it in front of so that I can get the sound that I'm looking for, then that's stuff that I can't necessarily do with my traditional setup anyway. Plus it's got scribble strips on it. So I don't know, that's made me think a little bit. Is anyone out there using just the HX effects? I'd be interested to know, did you end up selling off some of your pedals as a result of it? I know there's things like freeze presets that I could do with it, expression presets, and there's got loopers and all that stuff that I love about the Helix stuff, so I'm just thinking now, maybe it's time to sell some more stuff. I might try and do a tone match with the Dude, J-Rocket Dude, because that's one of my favourite drive pedals. If I can get that out of the Helix, then we'd be kind of sailing. Nemo? You alright, buddy? Yeah, anyway, so I guess the question is, I think I prefer to have a real amp with an HX effects rather than real pedals with an amp, if I had to choose. I think the practicality of using something like the HX effects, for me, is more convenient than whatever I might perceive that I was losing in terms of sound or whatever compared to the real pedals. In my experiments with like the King of Tone and with the Klon KTR, I think with the Timmy as well, I found that the models are super close, so I don't feel like I'm really losing much. And you gain a whole lot of gigability and a loss of tap dancing, which is a big loss. Hopefully that was vaguely interesting to one or two people. It's just a thought that I had after kind of building that Eric Johnson style preset for Keith. And I wanted to show how it's sounding in the room. I don't know how that's going to translate on the camera, but hopefully you get some sort of sense for how the amps are sounding. I'm really enjoying the way they're sounding in the room. I don't know what they might sound like if I put a mic on them, but yeah, super impressed with the HX effects, which I've not spent as much time with as I should. Catch you in a little bit. Cheers.